okay without the income. It's unfortunate, but we're fine. And, but her business,
Fixing it for much.
she registered it,
Well, I started calling that.
All this just depends on me.
Good afternoon, board members, staff, members of the audience. Let the record show that today is May 5th. The time is 3:02, and we will now call the Amherst County Board of Supervisors meeting to order. Is there a motion to approve? Well, before we get to the agenda, I just want to point out that Mr. Rogers will address Scottish Inns when he gives his county administrative report. So I just want everybody to know if there was any interest there, that will be addressed during that time. So is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The agenda is approved, and we will now move on to the invocation and the pledge of allegiance. Dear Lord, our Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for the democracy that allows this group of people to gather together and with goodwill in their hearts and to the best of their ability make decisions for this county that will further not only the people today but the generations in the future. Dear Lord, again, we ask that you bless our first responders. We ask that you bless our sheriff's department. We ask that you bless our teachers and all of the people who are on the front lines and putting themselves in jeopardy so that we can be safe and secure. Dear Lord, we ask that you keep our seniors, our class of 2020, in the palm of your hand as they go through a different graduation exercise this year, but one that promises to be just absolutely glorious. And bless them and bless the path that they choose to take in their life. And dear Lord, give us wisdom to make decisions that are pleasing to you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now open up this meeting to citizen comment. Do we have anyone here wishing to speak? Anyone here wishing to speak during citizen comment? No one on the phone? All right. Seeing and hearing none, we will now close citizen comment portion and move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Pugh. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The consent agenda is approved. We will now move on to old business. Ms. Wilkes, could you come forward, please?
Ms. Wilkes can do it. Since
So
you're here.
so we've got before you the modified agreement and the resolution to change the bond documents to specify the transfer station, convenience centers, and other needs for solid waste. It's a formality just to get us where we need to be on our bond documents. But we need your approval to sign those documents.
All right. Are there any questions of Ms. Wilkes while we've got her up here? None? All right, thank you, Ms. Wilkes. Board members?
Madam Chair, I move that the board adopt resolution number 2005-005-R, direct the county administrator to execute the modification agreement.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Martin. Thank you, Ms. Wilkes. We will now move on to new business, and we've got Mr. Brian Thacker here to talk to us about the contract for waste hauling. A lot of information, a lot of big decisions to be made. Mr. Thacker, proceed, please.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker. Hello, board. I feel like I know you better than my own family. I'm here every 2 weeks,
We
so
like that.
greetings. So I always state the stipulation of me being hired was to find cost-saving initiatives for both Amherst County and Public Works, and this is a large one. Prior to December, we had a bit of a discombobulated set of how we haul containers because we had the green box containers in the ground. In December, the last ones were removed, and the Dodge store location opened. So as of the first of the year, that's our really first evaluation on what we pay per month steady for picking up roll-off containers. So we only have a handshake deal currently with our hauler, who is County Waste. We do not have a contract in hand. We're looking for a more permanent long-term solution. So recently, the Assistant County Administrator put out a request for proposal. 6 companies put out a proposal to Amherst County to haul our recyclables and our trash containers. And we chose County Waste to continue for a contract if we were to go that way. We then compared their totals to what Amherst County could do internally. And these figures are included in your board packet. And these were made on several factors that are key, including the cost of a truck, the cost of drivers' wages, the cost of overhead, maintenance on said vehicles, benefits for the employee, insurance, and fuel. Doing this internally has several cost factors again included in your packets. Mainly, though, we go to an on-call schedule, which we could do since Public Works only only people we're worried about is Amherst County. We don't have other parties to worry about. It would be on call, meaning we're not hauling containers that are half full or 3/4 full on schedule. We only get cans when they're full. So at this point, with board approval, or unless otherwise notified, we intend to notify County Waste. We will begin doing our own services as of July 1st. The numbers County Waste proposed was $25,718.50 per month. Amherst County can do that for $14,690.82, equating a cost of $11,027.68 per month, or extrapolated for an entire year, $132,332.11 cost savings. I can go on and on with details, but I'm sure you have many questions and concerns that I'm here to address.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. I know that the board has a lot of questions.
Madam Chair, we're talking about item C or?
We're talking about, I know that's a little bit of confusion from what was on our packet and what was on this part. So, but we're talking about new business A.
Okay, award of contract for waste hauling.
Correct.
Without order. Okay.
Yeah.
They're in a different order in the packet?
Yes.
Because
Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, I just figured that since with the public, it was easier to go by the paper version.
Fair enough, okay.
So we are discussing award of contract for waste hauling. So let me start here. And I appreciate the comprehensive research that you've done to put all this together. I'm a bit of a skeptic. I've kind of been through this before. So you're saying that even with the purchase of all the equipment, the trucks that we've got to purchase, all equipment involved, that by your research and your analysis, we're still going to save $131,000.
That's correct. We only have one purchase, and that's one truck. The county already owns all the containers. We already have one driver, but we need to hire a second driver, but that would come within Public Works, because there's a position that will be discontinued as of June 30th. That position would then default to Public Works directly for this driver. So there would be no headcount addition. It would simply be the purchase of one more truck.
I have a question regarding that. So you got $175,000 for a new truck. That'd be upfront cost. Then we've got one driver right now that's working full time. Correct?
Yes, sir.
You're going to need another driver to work full time in order to cover all the calls for service from the convenience center to the landfill.
Yes, sir.
So is that what about the first driver? Is he stretched thin now? I mean, he's going to be hauling more, isn't he, than what he's doing now, or is that going to be made up by the second driver?
So County Waste has been telling us how they would like us to haul the cans. Right now, they typically haul Coolwell and Peddler, and we pick up the rest in terms of Dodge Store, Boxwood Farms, and 60 East. If we were to do this ourselves, we would find, again, the best distribution of how to put the drivers and where to put them the most economically feasible. So stretched thin, he's working a full 37.5-hour week now, hauling containers that County Waste has opted not to haul and has preferred that we haul.
And just for the record, to give some credibility to Mr. Thacker, not that he needs any, but for members of the audience and those who are on Zoom, Mr. Thacker ran a waste hauling business in Eastern Virginia. So he's done this for a number of years and knows it from the ground up. He also has a postgraduate degree, PhD, is that correct?
Doctorate.
Doctorate, yeah, in business.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So just give a little credibility to what this gentleman is saying. All right. I have one. Mr. Pugh, you have a question?
Well, yes, ma'am. Not really a question. I just, County Waste does this. This is their line of business. This is what they do every day. They sign contracts, they haul trash, what have you. And I know they have to make a profit because that's what businesses do. But I just feel like I'm a skeptic of saving $130,000 a year, $132,000 a year, when these people bid this stuff every day of the week. They know what they're doing. They know what it's going to cost. And that's kind of my problem. I don't know how to get over that fear, I guess you could say, of what it really truly might cost. I know that we've done some things like this in the past with different areas of government, and it hasn't panned out quite like it should. Oftentimes our estimates are not what they seem to turn out to be. So that's my problem trying to digest this. I mean, do I have the answer or not? No, but that's kind of where I'm at this point. And plus, I guess you could look at it as we also are providing jobs in the private sector by having a contract hauler versus doing it as a government. And I, for one, never necessarily like to grow government, but that's my stick up on this. Is I don't know if $130,000 is going to be attainable.
Okay, well, we wouldn't be growing government and there'd be no additional hires. We'd be using existing personnel, existing positions as it says. The only addition would be a truck. I shared your skepticism when I was hired. Mr. Rogers said, I think this is something we should do internally. I don't recall my exact response, but a scoff would be close to what I did. But running the numbers, again, this is not a feels, this is not I think, this is what the numbers dictate. I've had Mr. Rogers, Mr. Profit, and Ms. Wilkes look over the numbers and say, tell me where the flaws are, tell me where I'm missing something. They had some general questions, but they couldn't find any flaws in my figures. I understand you've been down this road in the past with other personnel and other positions at other times. I can't address those because I wasn't here. All I can tell you is I've run these numbers for a month, and this is what they come back as. Worst case scenario, and I'm completely wrong, we wouldn't be contracting with ourselves in 6 months. If you said this was an abject failure, we'd go through the exact same exercise, put it back on the street, and do it again. I'm sure a contractor would love to charge us $250,000, $300,000 a year for the business. I understand too, the county waste does this for a living. And as Ms. Tucker said, this is what I used to do for a living. But we don't have a profit motive, which is huge. We're not looking to seek a profit. And we're our only customer. So while county waste worries about us, and they've done a fine job servicing Amherst County, they've got hundreds, if not thousands of other customers in the region. Right now we have us. We're our only customer. We're here to service Amherst County through Public Works through this bid.
Mr. Thacker, tell me how this is going to benefit the citizens of Amherst. Take money out of it. You tell me how this will benefit the customers in Amherst.
Customers in Amherst, well, the biggest thing is the money, and that pops out $133,000. But if you take that out of the equation, again, we're using the assets we already have to its maximum. We're using everything we have instead of hauling half-empty cans or half-full cans or three-quarter full cans. We're filling them. We're utilizing the assets that the taxpayers have paid for. So I think of money primarily with this. In terms of benefit, if there's a problem on a weekend where county waste is not here and a cool well is closed, we have 2.5 drivers. We can call them in. Please get the cans out of Cool Well or Peddler or wherever else they may. park them temporarily, get a can in the spot, and for that day and a half a week that the landfill is shut down, we can move things around internally that we can't do outside through a contract agency. They don't typically work on Saturdays, and they really don't work on Sundays, but we can if we had to. That gives the citizens more ability to dump trash in the convenience centers when they're open.
Madam Chair, can I jump in on another point that
Mr. Rogers.
you're alluding to? And that is, you've all gotten calls about convenience centers in your districts that the cans were full. Where am I supposed to take my trash? The cans are full, but we can't empty the cans because it's not time for county waste to come pick them up. And they sit full until county waste can come and pick them up. Well, if we're running our own trucks with our own drivers, well, it won't get to that state because before it fills, the truck will be scheduled to come out. But if it did get to that, because we had a 3-day weekend, nice weather, you know, whatever the reason that we have these anomalies where all the trash shows up at the same day, we can empty the cans that day. And we don't have to sustain those kinds of complaints because we're in control. We're not waiting for someone else to come service us. That's how
Ms. Stack, I'm assuming you still remember how to drive a trash truck.
I continue to have a
So
commercial.
there
driver's
should
license.
never be any reason why we should get a phone call that a container is full of Warwick Bound Barn or Dodge Ford or anywhere. Is that
At
right?
the moment, we have 4 commercial drivers at the landfill. Certainly somebody can go get a can if it's full. Yes,
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair. I echo what Mr. Rogers said. As county government, obviously, we do not like to grow government. In this situation, I feel very confident Mr. Thacker has done his homework in looking at our current resources and try to utilize those to the maximum that we can. But the element of control for our people in our community means a lot. You have the only thing with county waste or whatever firm you had contracted, the only thing you have is a contract. You don't have control. So I think if we can create a savings anywhere close to $130,000 a year, especially in the times that we find ourselves in right now. Obviously, Mr. Thacker, this is not a new ball game for him. He has the education and the experience, and I feel confident in him if he can stand before us and say that he can stand behind his figures and his implementation of such programming, then that's what you get paid to do, and I think we need to respect that.
Madam Chair, if I may, there may be a consensus on the board, I'm not sure, but if there is the savings, we need to find a way to corral the savings and put it back into our general fund or into an obligated fund to fund something else, as opposed to this rolling back into the general fund for new positions, new hires, or so forth. I would like to see the savings go back into our unobligated reserve and earmarked, whatever we choose it to be. Maybe it goes back just to replenish that fund. I don't want this going back into, rolling back over into the budget and being spent, gobbled up. Then we don't see the savings because it's going right out the door. So I would like that to be a caveat if we pass this, that the savings go back to replenish our fund.
Madam Chair, there's 2 things I would like to see is that in 6 months, Mr. Thacker come back to us and make sure we're running where he feels like his numbers are. As far as, you know, it is working out as he anticipated to, and I agree with Mr. Pugh. If there is a savings to this amount, then I think this board needs to make a recommendation as to where it goes and how it is to be used. And however we need to create that verbiage in the motion, I would support that as well. But Mr. Thacker, I would like to know that we are staying on in line with what your feeling is in 6 months, if you don't mind, to let us know that things are going like you anticipated they would.
Yes, sir.
I think, Mr. Pugh, I think that's a great idea. Thank you for including that, Mr. Ayers. Ms. Wilkes, did staff have something they wanted to add?
I just wanted to say about the extra savings. We normally take the extra savings in the solid waste fund and put it towards closure. And because of all the money we've had to spend in the last couple of years, it most likely needs to stay in there as the savings for the solid waste to help towards the closure cost for the cell that we have to close to. We've fallen a little behind. I usually take everything but $200,000 and stick it in the reserve for that. And we're not quite there. So
Thank you.
I just wanted to share that with you so you would know.
What are your thoughts there?
I would just like to see it tracked. I would like to see that money tracked so we know what it is, how much we've accumulated. That way, we have something to judge the performance by, and we make sure that that money is going where it needs to go. So I would like it to be tracked.
Okay, I understand the tracking, but you said you wanted it earmarked.
Yeah, I
So
would,
does that work for you?
I mean, if we have to do that, and if that's where it needs to go, I thought we had enough money already to close the landfill, do all that with, the bonds we had taken out previously, as well as our reserve funds.
Well, yes, we do, but I mean, the closure goes for 30 years. It goes on for a long time. We don't have all the money now for the whole 30 years. And of course, we have 2 other landfills that we've closed that we also have to do sampling and reporting on. So does it go into the unobligated general fund? No, that's because the landfill is set aside as a separate enterprise fund, but it does go into their sort of general reserve, which was set up for the landfill. So we're just keeping it, the waste money in the waste system.
All right,
But
well,
we're tracking it.
I certainly would like to see it tracked. If it has to go into the reserve fund, then it needs to be tracked.
Mr. Martin?
So I just have a question. Under this scenario, you would have 2 trucks.
2 trucks and a spare.
Oh, so you would have a spare. So if one truck broke down.
Yes, sir. We currently have 2 trucks now. We would get a third. 2 of them are newer. One is older. The older would be a spare.
Okay, I'm fine with revisiting this in 6 months after you implement it.
Ms. Moore?
Yes. Can you tell me a little bit about the salary calculation? Is that based on the starting of the range? Is that based on the midpoint of the range?
It's based on what we're currently paying now. So what that salary is what our current driver is making. And then we would have 2 drivers that would be double that salary plus the benefit accrual, which is 32% on top of that. So that's included in that total. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Just know when you hire somebody, sometimes the salary can fluctuate based on years of experience, et cetera. So I just want to make sure that we take that into consideration.
All right, Mr. Ayers, I believe that you had started a motion that will probably need to have an addition made to it.
All right, I'll try to put this together. Madam Chair, I recommend that the board approve Public Works as the exclusive hauler for all Amherst County convenience center containers as of July the 1st, 2020. Furthermore, that the Director of Public Works report back to this board in 6 months to let us know that we are on track with the numbers as he's presented to us today, and that any savings that may be created through this additional responsibility for Public Works will be tracked and reported appropriately to the Director of Finance and remain in the reserve for Public Works.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Thacker. Excellent presentation. Okay, next, on our hard copy, we've got the appropriations for a telephone system for Ms. Stacy Wilkes.
It's time for us to upgrade our telephone system. And so we have set this money aside each month as we bill each department. This is already set aside in the telecommunications fund. We just need you all to appropriate it so it can be spent on an upgrade to the system.
Okay, but this money is already in place, right? We're not
We
taking
have a
anything
separate
from.
special revenue fund.
Okay. All right. Any questions from Ms. Wilkes? All right, we need a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the board appropriate $136,582.25 from the telecommunications fund balance for the telephone system upgrade.
All right, there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion passes. Thank you. All right, next, Mr. Thacker, we'll have you back up to talk about why we suspended plastics and paper recycling.
Well, we haven't suspended it yet. But again, I reiterate, as I was brought on board to help look for cost savings for the county, this is one that has come up. And People are very passionate about recycling in Amherst, shall we say. Our convenience centers typically recycle metal, cardboard, plastics, and paper. So traditionally, metal and cardboard in bulk amounts, heavy amounts, generate revenue positive or revenue neutral for municipalities and localities like Amherst. Plastic, on the other hand, and paper in smaller quantities, generates revenue negative for the county. So looking at the recycling we did in the past 12 months, we've recycled about 83 tons of plastic. If we were to recycle these today going forward, we would pay approximately $70 a ton to recycle these materials, either at Sunoco in Madison Heights or elsewhere, costing the taxpayers thousands of dollars, approximately $5,800 in just tonnage alone. Once you involve hauling, it gets up to about $10,000 to $12,000 a year, think about $1,000 a month. So it's not profitable or break even, and it hasn't been for some time, pretty much over a decade. There have been some fluctuations. It is a commodity, but plastics in general, since the Great Recession, have not generated anything close to what they did 10 to 12 years ago. And to be clear, I am suggesting that we suspend, not terminate, the plastics program. When it becomes revenue positive or revenue neutral, the cans are on site at the landfill. We'll simply put them back out at the convenience sites. We've also looked at single streaming like they do in the town of Amherst. But the closest facility to do that is in Christiansburg, which is about a 98-mile drive. It would not save any money, certainly. To do that, it would cut the tonnage in half, but it's still revenue negative. Many other counties and municipalities are facing the same issue. Fortunately, Amherst, with the size we are, we can make moves a little more expediently than larger 200, 300,000 people city centers. Where I'm from, King George County just suspended their recycling because of similar concerns and because of COVID-19 and the proximity of people using the containers and the close quarters they're in those particular convenience centers. Also think about this, we talked about with garbage hauling a lot of air, which we would stop doing if we would do on call. We have the same problem with plastics containers. So you have a 20 cubic yard container that these are in. If you filled it with trash, it'd be 5 to 10 tons. You fill it with plastic, it's 1 to 2 tons. So you're hauling a lot of air. If you want to look at a carbon footprint of paying $70 a ton and hauling a truck back and forth and a waste of resources in general, it's cost negative and it has been. However, I know it's a political issue. I know it's a hot topic with many residents, especially since the containers were removed from both the Amelon and Annenbriar shopping centers. We have gotten a slew of phone calls. So I leave this to you. We can save about $1,000 a month doing it this way, but based on the politics of it, I leave it in your hands as to how you want Public Works to proceed with recycling plastic.
Thank you, Mr. Thacker.
Yes, ma'am.
Board members, I don't know about y'all, but I have received a ton of calls and emails about this issue. And I want to thank, there have been a number of staff members and volunteers who have really tried to educate the public. Jenny Myers is one. She has done a real good job on Facebook and social media explaining, as much as we were all taught that recycling is good, why it's not working now. But it is, it's a philosophical and it's a political issue, which is why we're here. Any questions of Mr. Thacker?
So yes, Madam Chair. So right now, if I wanted to recycle some plastic, I would take it to a convenience center and put it in a bin.
4 of our convenience centers, yes, sir.
4 of them, because Boxwood Farm doesn't have it.
And Dodge Store doesn't have the square footage to put a container.
Okay, I've heard about that also. So one of the 4 places I would take it, I would put it in a bin and separate it. Who would haul that bin?
Currently, it's been county waste, but based on the approval given 10 minutes ago, we would haul it as of July 1st.
Which, based on what you told us, it would be cheaper, right? So these numbers would change.
The numbers are as is. So the numbers I presented earlier are assuming we're keeping the recycling program as is. It's assuming no changes.
Okay, so we actually saved, what was it, 130? Yeah. So then when you take it to Sunoco, all right, we're basically giving them a product, but we're paying them to pay.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
That's a pretty good deal for them, I guess. Yeah. Okay. But I think you're right, it is a philosophical discussion. I think really until we stop using so much of this, that's really the answer. But until then, I personally think that we ought to continue in recycling. I'm redoing the porch rails on my porch, and I just bought lumber made out of recycled milk jugs to do that, right? I'm not such saying it came from Amherst, but it came from somewhere. So, there is benefit out of recycling, and yes, it is costing us, but I think some things is just the right thing to do philosophical. So I will not support suspending the recycling of paper wholesale.
Board members?
I would just like to comment. I agree with Mr. Martin. I think we should continue to recycle. It keeps 83 tons of plastic out of the land, or out of the landfill, not just plastic, but all the recyclables. Furthermore, once we have our transfer station built, we will be having to contract somebody to haul that additional trash, 83 tons a year, additionally to another landfill. Will be disposed of that landfill. I don't think you included any of those costs in here at this point in time. Is that correct?
Which specific costs are you referring to?
The additional 83 tons of trash that we're going to have to contract for someone to haul to the landfill in Cumberland or wherever the landfill is.
That's
once
correct.
The transfer station is built.
That's correct.
So that will be an additional cost that we'll have. So the savings that we may see now will be even less.
No, I don't think so. No, It's apples and oranges, because you've got two components. You've got the local trash pickup, and then you've got the transfer station to the other point trash pickup.
If we get rid of recycling, and once the transfer station is built, that recycled material will go to the transfer station, loaded onto a tractor trailer, which will create 83 tons of more trash per year. And that will have to be included in the hauling contract. I'm suggesting that we'll have even less savings by doing away with the recycling.
I need a point of clarification. Does the recycling still go to Sunoco?
Currently goes to County Waste in Lynchburg, and they separate it and send it to their recycling facility outside of Richmond.
So
That would cease because County Waste would continue to do that for us, provided we gave them a contract for solid waste services. But with that being terminated now as of July 1st, we would likely take it to Sunoco, but it is a commodity. We would check around to see who gives the least expensive price for us to recycle these materials.
But at that point, we're only hauling a full container.
Well, full is relative. So again, there's a lot of airspace, but yes, it would theoretically be full at that point. But again, that's just more tonnage that we pay for when we go to the recycling facility.
Yes, but Madam Chair, Mr. Pugh's point, it would be cheaper to haul it to Sunoco than to haul it to Cumberland, right?
I would think so, yeah.
But we are talking apples and oranges, because right now we're doing a dedicated haul of recycled to a facility. So one truck, one can, picks up at one spot, goes to another. If we were to cease doing that or suspend it temporarily, the plastic would be interdispersed with the garbage, and therefore would be combined, and only be one haul instead of two hauls. Not one haul for garbage, one haul for plastic. It'd be one haul for garbage.
Yeah, I get it. I'm still not there, also.
So
Madam Chair, if I might address Mr. Pugh's comments, just a couple things not to forget. I mean, whether we're hauling to Cumberland in 22-ton increments, or whether we're hauling to Sunoco or downtown in 8-ton increments, we're going to have savings in that hauling of those 83 tons of recycling. Now, the costs of paying for all of that are coming from the fact that we're not running a landfill anymore. That's where that cost is paid for. So we're actually moving the same tonnage. We've calculated we're moving the same tonnage, but we're doing it in larger trucks, in larger weights, and we're doing more at the same time to achieve the economies of scale. So it's the same amount of trash And in both cases, it's at a lower cost. We're thinking that, now this hauling is going to be an additional cost. No, it's not an additional cost because we're not running the landfill. We're using that money to pay for the hauling. So it's not an additional cost, it's already covered.
Going back to the recycling, so if it goes to Sunoco, if the plastic bags go to Sunoco, we know that there's no market for them, but I guess somebody's buying them, to his point about the railings. So what we're really doing is Amherst County believes in recycling, our citizens believe in recycling, so we're willing to subsidize recycling, is that?
Plastics at least, yes.
Yes. What about paper?
And paper,
And paper.
correct.
All right.
Ma'am, just some additional information. When we were at Sunoco and we got a tour of their whole process, one of the questions that we had was, was there anything in particular that we could collect and recycle to make money on, or at least it would break even? And one of the items that we were told was non-colored plastics, the milk jugs. If we could collect milk jugs, there is a market for that. The problem that we have is little Amherst County can't fill a truckload of milk jugs in a year, and so we're just not large enough to do that. So he's not set up to collect those and keep those separate. They all get mixed in together, and that's why he gets bottom dollar for the plastics that he has. So we did explore particular things.
What about plastic water bottles? Does that count?
We talked about those specifically, and no, there's no market. I mean, oil is now so cheap, and that's what the bottles are made from. There's just no market for that. And of course, even when there is a market, they have to be cleaned. They have to be sorted, which means that there's no other materials mixed in with it before they can sell it. And anytime something's not clean or not uniform, it ends up in a landfill.
And another point he's making too is contamination. And that's something we're seeing a lot of, the contaminated recycle loads. So now we're sending a truck that's supposed to go to Sunoco and instead brings it back to the landfill and dumps it on the face because there's too much trash in there, not enough recyclables. So that's a hidden cost in all of this equation as well. How much that is, I don't know, but it's several loads a week, several loads a month.
Madam Chair, I think you said it clearly right. Basically, the question is, are we as a board or a county willing to subsidize recycling? And I think unless we want to ban plastic straws, I would say the answer is yes. We want to subsidize, at least I would want to subsidize recycling. And we're talking about $11,000, somewhere along that.
Yes, sir.
If that. And I've had many calls. I've had more calls on recycling than anything since I've been on.
One more question for you. Is there a way for you to put some type of recycling container at Dodds Ford store?
Something we're looking into as that site's about to be repaid. We're considering putting a slab there for a cardboard compactor. Since the cardboard is revenue positive or neutral, that is a cost we're exploring at the moment.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, board members, we ready to make a decision? Need a motion?
Do we need a motion or we just continue as it is?
The lack of a motion, we would do it. Correct, Mr. Walker.
No, I think, well, it's my personal opinion, and I'll make the motion. We need to make a public statement here about how this county feels about recycling. Mr. Martin, you were very articulate on that issue.
Well, I'll make a motion that the county continues recycling as is, and also that we look into putting the recycling containers into Dodge.
Thank you. Motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you, Mrs. Thacker. Next, we've got the Appropriation CARES Act Healthcare Provider bidding.
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Rogers.
Thank you. We have received funding from the federal government as part of COVID-19 response. It's an amount of $53,000. It is provided for the specific purpose of health care expenses. And we propose to, so this money needs to be appropriated into our budget by the board and then designated where it's to go. So that's what we're doing here today, to determine where that should go. What we would like to propose that money be used for, $33,000 of that money could be used to begin paying our EMS crew salaries at the rate that the board plans to pay them starting 1 July. We would like to begin paying them that amount now. So 3 months early, they would begin receiving the salary that we're planning to pay them on 1 July. That's $33,000. That leaves $20,000 left to pay for any expenses. To date, I don't think we have more than $3,000 worth of, don't have any qualifying expenses.
It's around 3,000.
About 3,000. So we're setting aside 20,000 just in case. And if any of that money is not used, that money can be thereafter used to help us pay our overtime expenses. Because we have a shortage of manpower, we have many work schedule slots, time slots that are open that have to be filled by other people. We have to pay part-timers to do that, so we're paying a lot in overtime. And this money could be used to help pay for that too. That money's already in the budget, but this money, it would qualify for that purpose. So the question before the board is, may we use that to begin making the salary change early? And one of the biggest reasons for that, of course, is to stop the loss of personnel, to demonstrate appreciation for their effort, and stand as somewhat of an incentive to stick with us until the new salary does come into effect. Another proposal that you have before you is that we hold that salary increase until 1 July and then release the $33,000 to the EMS crews who are on the payroll on that date. And I've heard of other alternatives. Another one that splits the difference is pay half of the 33 as part of their salary now and leave the other half as a bonus sort of increase that would take effect for those that are on our payroll on 1 July. So at this point, we just sort of need the board to give us some guidance on how you would like to use that money.
And board members, just a point of clarification, on option 1, it mentions in your package, it mentions hazardous duty pay. This is only for public safety employees. It's not for anyone other than public safety. Does the public safety director, has he voiced an opinion as to which he would prefer?
I think he'd prefer the salary begin immediately. The increase in salary that we plan for 1 July, start it now with the next paycheck, and it would just continue on.
Since the public safety director is here with us, would you come forward and just speak to us briefly about what you think will best help your people?
Madam Chair and Board, we're in a position now where we start off the month, or the end of the month, with 30 open homes. It's costing the county a lot of money. I've got guys and girls that are pretty ragged out, they've worked a lot, and we're actually using our part-timers a ton more than we have. COVID-19 has compounded that. We've worked on this, my guess is around 100 days now. I think when you started working on this on February 2nd, our proposal to the team was to start immediately. I'm not going to call it bonus, I'm going to call it combat pay. I worry about these kids every day. I've had ones that were tested, quarantined for a little bit because there's more testing now. They deserve it. They're doing the work. They're seeing patients. We've had 225 patients that I know of that had COVID-like symptoms over the last 2 months. So I worry about their exposure, their family's exposure, and the viral load that they take with them, and they build up for every patient they see. We've got great training, great equipment. We put our heart and soul to this. I think it would mean a lot. It would say a lot to our people if you would pay them now.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ayers?
this funding became available to our locality. As you see, it's called the CARES Act. And that care means a lot. It's care to and life-saving care to the citizens of that county. But these men and women go beyond the call of duty with what they do each and every day, maintaining their training and providing the services that they do. Both of my children do the same thing in other localities, so I know what they're dealing with this. I don't think there's any question to be asked if we have the availability of this fund to start doing something for our people immediately. And with that being said, I'm going to make the motion that the board approve $33,000 for hazardous duty pay and $20,226.01 for other operating costs from the CARES Act funding we have received in this county.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers. Are there any other board members that would like to comment on this?
Yes, I have a question. I already know the answer, but I just wanted for public clarification. This money comes from the federal government, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The only strings attached to this government is the fact that it needs to be spent on public safety, is that right?
Healthcare expenses.
Healthcare expenses, okay. This is all related to the COVID-19 pandemic. This money will not be required to be paid back at any point in time. This is the money, this is our money. It can be spent on either of these items if we so choose, is that correct? Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm probably closer to this than a lot of you, not close enough to have to declare conflict of interest, but close. You know, I would call this hazardous duty pay. You know, when you go out on an EMS call, you're very up close and personal with these patients. You're in the face, you're sticking IVs, you're putting tubes, you're providing life supportive actions. That is different than some other jobs in public service. I also know personally some people that work for the county, public safety, that have not been able to see their little girl for 2 to 3 months because they are working on EMS, because the mother doesn't want her potentially exposed to the COVID virus. So I fully support the motion of appropriating the $33,000 now and giving it to our employees. That being said, I do think that the county should look further into being able to do something for our law enforcement, because they're doing the same. They're not doing the EMS work, but they're out there day in and day out dealing with people up close and personal. And I believe Mr. Rogers put some dollar amounts together for that. We'd have to find a different line item to take that from. And we can discuss that separately, but I fully support Supervisor Ayers' motion.
So I'm in agreement, but for point of clarification, when this money is going for pay, is that just for the EMTs that are in facilities, or are you talking about dispatchers, anybody under your purview?
No, it's frontline healthcare providers, people touching patients. And it would, my recommendation would, it would be April, May, and June, until we get to a separate topic, the pay raises in July.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, there's a motion.
I'm sorry, just further clarification. If that 20,000 does not go towards other operating costs, that would go towards overtime pay. That's right.
That's our plan at this point. And
just didn't want to lose that.
exactly.
But you understand?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers.
Yes,
All in
ma'am.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Please pass on our deep appreciation to your staff.
I'll do that. So we're here now. Thank you.
All right, moving on to county administrator's report. The project status report and a update on the Scottish Inns.
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Rogers.
You have before you the project status report. A few of the items have changed. They're there. Before I get to the Scottish Inn, does anyone have any particular questions on any of the other projects? Do you see any items, any of our projects that we're working on that you don't see on the list that you want me to be tracking? Or any that you think it's time to take them off? We're about to take tornado response off, but for COVID-19, we think we would have resolve the last family. And when that is all over, we'll come back and let you know that. We were aiming for the 2-year point, that it would all be done and over with, and everyone would be brought back to their original condition. So otherwise,
Ms. Rogers, there was some discussion from the Ag Committee, specifically the Fair Subcommittee, that they may, after things calm down a little bit, that they may be looking at an event in the fall, perhaps a rodeo or something of that nature. Can you please stay in touch with them?
okay, you want me to start tracking the status of the
Yeah,
fair?
yeah, that might be a
Okay.
good idea. All right.
Add that in. Okay, then with regard to the Scottish Inn, I received, well, just to bring everybody back up to speed, the Scottish Inn closed and all of its tenants were gone as of November 18th. Under our agreement with them, they were given 210 days to obtain a demolition permit. And then, once they had the permit, they were to be given 60 days to complete the demolition. That 210-day limit that they had their demolition permit will expire on June 2nd. So we're not yet at that deadline. I asked the owner for an update on where he stood with regard to the demolition. I had previously been informed that they had received bids from a variety of demolition companies, and he was taken aback at the cost. He was not prepared for the cost to demolish the property. I had been informed that they had received financing through their bank for the construction of the new Howard Johnsons. But because of the cost of the demolition, that was on hold. The owner is now seeking a loan from the Small Business Administration that includes the cost of demolition and construction. And his application with the SBA is now hung up in all the Small Business Administration's processing of COVID-19 loans and assistance. And they don't expect to have an answer shortly, and they don't know when they'll be able to get an answer on their loan application through the SBA. Their attorney has requested a delay for 6 months in obtaining the demolition permit. And I have not yet responded as to whether we want to grant that delay or not. Of course, the ball is in our court to respond. We can do that with a yes, a no, or something in between, such as 3 months and reassess. My particular concern is that when we get to the point that we say no, that we want to enforce the agreement, it then falls to the county to pay for the demolition. And as I understand it, Mr. Lockley is welcome to correct me, we are going to have to condemn the property and pay for its fair market value before we can demolish it. So we will have paid for a hotel, a demolition, and we will receive a vacant lot in return. I'm concerned about spending county funds for that purpose. I recognize the importance of enforcing our agreements and the requirements that we place, that we have to put some teeth in our assertions. And so I'm coming to the board seeking guidance on how best to respond to this situation.
Madam Chair,
Mark?
when the board, I believe this was before my time on the board, but when the board went into this, was there a thought of where the money would come from if the county had to condemn and tear it down?
I don't believe that we discussed that. We were aware of the fact that it would be expensive, but we felt compelled, given the case, the blight case on this facility, that we needed to act. And it turned out that the owner and his counsel were working with us, so we were moving forward. Whether this is a surprise to some or anyone that they're seeking a delay is another matter, but here we are.
Well, Madam Chair, what I do know is that they have not been operating since November 18th.
Yes, sir.
And thank you, and Mr. Bryant, for pulling the calls for service. The calls for service have dropped dramatically since that time. I believe there was 50 some before that. They dropped to 5 from November 18th until today, and one of them was for chest pain. I believe the other 4 were law enforcement. So that's a step in the right direction, at least. We're not seeing the other types of issues that we've been seeing out there. So unless the other board members know where we would find the revenue to condemn the property and tear it down, I don't know if we have much of an option rather than to explain.
The one thing that I would, might make a recommendation to you as the attorney, there is a force majeure clause in the contract, and I think that it's debatable as to whether or not in this specific instance it's force majeure. I know that most construction projects have slowed down but not stopped during this process because there are OSHA requirements that have resulted in a lot of construction processes having to be slower. But I don't think that it's unreasonable to, for instance, for this board to say, you know what, until June 10th, which is when the governor says that the current emergency situation is at least going to be strongly reevaluated, if not ended. We're going to consider this to be a force majeure situation. Let's revisit this at the board's 2nd June meeting and figure out and look at this again, what the status is at that point in time. That would be my recommendation. Again, I'm not here to admit that it's a force majeure situation because I think there's an argument there, but I think it's an argument that is not worth having, I think.
So if they pull the demolition permit by June 2nd, how long do they have to act on it?
They'll have 60 days.
Can they extend the demolition permit once it's? I'm saying, okay, so we're not gonna have a meeting before June 2nd, right? Under what Mr. Lockhart was.
Well, if he's suggesting that we give them until, I think we wait till June 2nd. We notify them that we're gonna set the date of the delay until June 2nd.
You give them the number, you just add the number of days onto the end of 210 as it is from 210 to June 10th. So you take June 10th and subtract to what the 210th day was, and then you add that on after June 2nd. And then at that point, we revisit this entire matter.
Okay, so you're saying just extend that by a little bit.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Lockerbie, and I don't know that this is possible. The county has operated in good faith through this whole process. I think that we have been over backwards as a board and with staff and with our sheriff's department to help this entity right their wrongs. And you know, whether it's a force majeure, whether it's not, is there any way that we could say, okay, we're going to give you your June 10th. There's been complicating circumstances. However, we would like for you to give us another property in trust, in escrow, in something. Could we do that?
You can always ask for anything, Madam Chair, and I don't think it would be unreasonable to ask for some sort of an assurance that this is, in fact, you know, tied up in the SBA. The SBA is being asked to do a lot of things right now that it didn't expect to do and probably doesn't have the staff to do. It makes sense. Let's make sure that there are, in fact, demo bids in existence, that there is in fact an application to the SBA. And I think that's a conversation that either I or Mr. Rogers or both can have with Mr. Narayan and Mr. Hawkins.
The board members, would you all be willing to entertain that they give us another piece of property to show their good faith on this in the event that they break their agreement?
I think the more surety we can get as a board, absolutely. But we have a long history of how things have gone with this particular entity, and this is no surprise to me. And we'll probably be back at this, another meeting, and at the expiration of whatever we give them, talking about, again, are we gonna give another extension of what we're gonna do, or what are we gonna do? History just continues to repeat itself with, this particular situation. So I think the board needs to buckle down, and what are we gonna do? You know, what kind of numbers do we need to look at as far as, you know, if we put our foot down and say enough's enough? You can look at the particular buildings now and how they've been shielded, and if you make a pass through, kind of how they look and there's no indication to me that he's trying to do anything to make it any better for the community at all in its appearance, and there's still a lot of foot traffic around the place. I just think it'll be the same old thing, the same old time, continuing.
I would like to see Amherst County have a lien on another one of their pieces of property.
I'm fine with whatever we can do, man.
Board members, any other, what do y'all think? Mr. Martin?
How much is a demolition permit?
Nate, isn't it?
For that property, it'd be $102.
Okay. I'm assuming it was constructed early enough that they have to have asbestos reports to get the permit?
We have been instructed that the environmental assessments are already completed.
But you have not seen
That would be not happening.
So I'm fine with what you suggested, Madam Chair. You know, I would almost rather that they go ahead and have to file for the demolition permit by June 2nd. And then if we needed to extend the deadline, it would be the August 3rd deadline. We think. So, and that way we would have to see the asbestos reports and we would know whether or not they completed the environmentals. That's just a suggestion.
It would be interesting to see if they've had environmental assessments done on that property.
Is that something we can check on?
I can, yes, and I can request, I'll request the SBA application. I'll request copies of the bids that they received from the demolition companies. I'll ask for a copy of the environmental assessment that was done by an engineering firm. I can certainly request a lien. What I think I need to do, maybe Mr. Lockerbie, is I think what I'm hearing is we want to stand on the June 2nd deadline. And if there's going to be any extension beyond that, we want to see these documents. And they need to be prepared to offer us a lien on another property if they want to go beyond the June 2nd deadline. Now that June 2nd is just for the application. They still have 60 days beyond that to accomplish the demolition. He doesn't want to pull the permit because he's got 60 days, then he's got to pay for the demolition. So he's got to make sure he knows what it's going to cost and what he's got the money to pay for it before he comes and gets the permit. But I get that.
But we could extend the 60 days, correct?
Well, I think that's what I have to offer, that we get these things and then we could extend the 60 days.
I guess what I'm thinking is that if it comes to the point where we have to take the property and demolish it, we may want to know what the demolition estimates are, and we would probably want to have environmentals in our hands also, of course.
But let's be clear. I mean,
We don't want to do that.
I know that, but it's not even going to be that easy to just take the property and do a demolition. We're going to fight over whether this was force majeure or not. Then we're going to fight over the valuation and the condemnation. I mean, we're talking over a year's worth of litigation just while the place deteriorates, while we wait to get our chance to tear it down.
Mr. Lockerbie, at any time you think that we should cease these discussions and hold them for a closed session, please speak up.
We're definitely getting to that point.
Thank you.
But I do think that we, unless the board has, some matters that we want to chase down the rabbit hole at this point, the place where I think Mr. Rogers and I have heard, and tell me if you've got a different understanding, Mr. Rogers, is that we're going to ask for some documentation as to how far they've gotten on their process. We're going to ask what further security we can get in terms of being sure that they're really going to be pulling the permit by, June 2nd plus whatever 8-day extension perhaps that they might get. And from that point, we'll move on. And the possibility that we have is that they might get an extension on the 60-day period, assuming that there is some security that we would feel comfortable with.
I have a question. You said surety? That's their choice. I mean, you can ask all day long.
Well, I think that.
Right, the likelihood of them actually doing that, I mean.
It's very low.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say no to
would you,
myself.
if you were in this situation? No.
No.
Okay, I mean, you can try anything, I suppose.
Well, and now you're making my point, that when they say no, then we have to execute. We have to act, we have to begin the process of condemnation.
And we haven't answered that question, and we don't even know the costs.
Right. Anyway, I think I've got the guidance, we've got the guidance that we need. And we're gonna, I plan to hold firm on the June 2nd. They'll pull the permit on June 2nd. And what we're negotiating now is the 60 days, whether we'll extend the 60 days. And we want some documents and we'd like some assurance. Otherwise, feel free to demolish it within the full time frame you've already been given. The emergency will be over. The firms are still out working now. You can do that now. I think it's possible for us to not back down and offer them the flexibility if they want to take it. There's a price to get an extension, and that's greater assurances. And I think the lien is a good idea.
Have they met every obligation on the agreement thus far?
Yes and no. I had Nate go out there today, and the doors of all the rooms are unlocked. Some of them sit open. We've no indication that people are living there or have moved in, but that's hardly secure. There's furniture stacked outside. I've got to get Kelly Meeks to go look at that, Deputy Meeks, to determine whether that's a violation. So we'll certainly be insistent upon that also. And anything else that Mr. Young or Deputy Meeks finds, will make that clear in our assertions in my response to the request for this delay. So mostly, yes, they have been compliant. And it all seems to have gone well at the beginning, and why it slowed down appears to be his reluctance to spend the money it takes to abate the asbestos and tear one of the two structures down.
I have a question. A large expense would be obviously getting rid of the material on site. What is the charge at the landfill per ton for debris like that? Is it 40?
It is 45.
45 per ton?
But asbestos would be separate.
Yeah, that would have to go somewhere else.
So we could take it, but it would be a separate. We're required to the operations manual with the Commonwealth that we have to bury that separately.
I think I have the direction that I need.
Are we in sync? I think we are.
I think we are.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Departmental Spotlight, Sheriff's Office. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll get to the county attorney's report in just a minute. You go ahead, sir. Thank you. Sorry, Ms. Clark.
Madam Chair, Madam Assistant Chair, on the board. I prepared right much stuff here. I talked to Mr. Rogers. I didn't know I had 10 minutes, so what I want to propose before y'all is, you know, I can present some of what I got. If you guys got questions about the sheriff's office that I can answer, do this, you know, during the COVID-19 pandemic, or I can give you a brief synopsis on pretty much how we operate. I'll let y'all decide since
Well, why don't you go ahead and give us what you got? We've got any questions, we can ask them, but we may just have you come back again. Don't look so scared.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, it's been a longer meeting than we had expected, so
Right.
thank you for your patience.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to give a brief thing about the sheriff's office, which is off of the website. The sheriff's office provides first responders to calls for services related to law enforcement and public safety. The agency is separated by 3 divisions, which is a field division, investigation division, and administrative division. These divisions have several subcomponents: special response team, court security, crime prevention, animal control, and we also do the animal shelter. We also have school resources, school resource officer program, and we have approximately 69 members in the department. We hired 3 more people. We're supposed to start on May 11th to actually get sworn in and come to work. And we're dedicated to provide the best law enforcement and possible for the citizens and visitors of the county. We're also in the process of trying to get accredited this year. We don't know exactly where we stand based on this COVID-19 pandemic as far as the assessment board. And we also have, we had a workforce program, and again, we do crime prevention. It's broken down, obviously, I'm the chief deputy. We have Captain Craig Davis, who's over the field operations, Captain John Tettleton, who's over investigations, and Captain Julie Reynolds, who's over administration. We also have a code of ethics here for each and every deputy who joins our department is responsible for. We recently put out a memorandum here, which I did not include in my presentation about the COVID-19 operation and how the sheriff's department is operating in reference to going to calls and everything such as nature, and also in our office at this time. Some of, I think some of the information I think maybe you guys might have been looking for was some employees hired, like going full-time from the year, we started from the year of 2016 to 2019. In 2016, we had 7 people that were hired. In 2017, we had 7 people that were hired. 2018, we had 2 people hired. And in 2019, we had 9. Net departing full-time employees between 2016 and 2019. In 2016, we had 8. 2017, we had 3. 2018, we had 5. In 2019, we had 11. Again, I say we have a total of 69 employees, full-time civilian employees. At the animal shelters too, we have 4 part-time civilian employees. At the animal shelter, we have 2 full-time sworn animal control officers. In the sheriff's department, we have 39 sworn people, 12 part-time sworn, and 6 full-time civilians and 4 part-time civilians, bringing us a total of 69. Some of the numbers that I do have for you is that the Sheriff's Office responded to 25,300 calls for service countywide in the year of 2019. In 2018, we responded to 28,152 calls for service countywide. 2017, we responded to 29,114. And in 2016, we responded to 27,882 calls. I wasn't able to break all of those calls down in specific because we were talking about countywide. If we had one particular area, such as say Lowe'sville or Madison Heights, to do a breakdown. But I wasn't able to do that. But some of the calls that investigations had in 2019, Investigation Bureau burglary charges, we had 4. We had a total of 20 calls, which gave us a total of 24. Larceny calls, we cleared 24, and we had 54 pending, and 6 of them were unfound. Robbery calls, we had 3 that were still pending, weren't able to solve those in 2019. Sexual assaults, we had 4 that were cleared, 0 pending, unfounded was 3. Murder cases, we had a total of 3. We cleared all of those in 2019. Assault cases, we had a total, cleared 4, and it was 1 unfounded, which gave a total of 5. Fraud cases, we cleared 4, we pending 21, and 4 was unfounded. Property crimes, we had 4 that were pending, that were still pending. Other death investigations, we had 6 that were unfounded. In child pornography cases, we had 2 that were unfounded. 2017, on some of the investigative calls and charges, we had 7 rapes. Sexual assaults, we worked 13. Burglary, we had 35. Murder, manslaughter cases, we had 2. Robbery, we had 5. Larceny, we had 44. And in 2018, we had 12 rapes. Sexual assaults, we had 19. Burglary, we had 39. Murder, manslaughter cases, we had 1. Robbery, we had 4. And larceny, we had 174. I gave you the numbers, I think, on 2019. Now, so far up to 2020, and I think we have a little bit more since I did these numbers, but we've had 2 rape cases, 6 sexual assaults. We've had 5 burglaries. This year we haven't had any murders, thank God. And robbery, we've had 1, and larceny, we've had a total of 23. In 2019, as far as traffic-related DUI arrests, we had a total of 50. 2018, we had a total of 65. 2017, we had a total of 34. 2016, we had a total of 62. Also, we had, I'll get into the drug cases. Some of these drug cases are related also with criminal investigations. But in 2019, emergency custody cases, we had approximately 180 of those. And these are going to be pertaining to emergency custody, such as taking them into custody because they have some type of mental issue. So, in 2018, we had 151. 2017, we had 95. In 2016, I don't have a number on that. But these emergency custody orders and also what we call TDOs, these calls are very time consuming, which ties up our officers a lot. Normally, they started out like with 8 hours where you could spend that much time at the hospital, but now it's got up to at least 12 hours or more until they actually make a decision on these people or if they can find a bed or something. I want to get a little bit into our traffic citations. We've had quite a few traffic citations that have been done and written over the years. We had close to 2,000 and some traffic citations, which would have been out in 2016. And a lot of that was due to deputies working overtime, being able to go work on their days off to try to make ends meet and bring charges. From 17 on up to 20, we averaged approximately about 1,000 per year or more in reference to traffic charges. Yeah, getting into the drug cases is, as far as investigations is concerned in some of these road cases. Some of this stuff I had sent you, but since I sent this to you, I've had contact with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office in reference to some of these indictments on drug charges, which you were able to see them because you have them before you. In 2020 so far, we did 27 indictments. 2019, we had a total of 289 indictments where we indicted people for drug charges. 2018, we had a total of 501 drug indictments. And in 2017, we had a total of 254. And most of these indictments came from, again, from road officers making traffic stops, and not only that, from the narcotics officers going out in the field, being able to gather up information and intelligence and giving up to give people charges.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I think the governor signed it into law, but now the simple possession of marijuana is now only a civil.
Yes, sir.
Is that already law? Is that already in place? And how is that going to affect your department?
I think it's going to affect us. I think it's going to affect us a lot. You know, most of the marijuana charges have kind of been on hold anyway, because we've had some judges that said they wouldn't convict on marijuana charge, being that they knew it was going to come civil. So some of the marijuana cases, again, like I said, have already been on hold. I think when you get into most serious drugs like the Schedule 1, Schedule 2s, and Schedule 3s is where we could see right much punishment.
The priority.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And other than that, just giving a brief, I just had a couple more where we were, where we made some big drug arrests. Really, when Mr. Ayers recently left the department, we were in a big a drug case. dealing with the federal government, where we were able to take down one of the big kingpins as far as drugs is concerned. When Sheriff Barr took over, and from my understanding at this point, we're still trying to extradite this gentleman back from Mexico. We're having a hard time trying to get him back here. So with that, I'm gonna kind of end it. Y'all have questions? I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Board members, any questions?
Thank you, Major.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Major Elliott, on the temporary detention orders, can you tell me a little bit more what's involved for that? And do you guys have to physically stay with them?
Yes, sir, we do. Not unless if you have a CIT officer that's on duty at the hospital, or we can actually take them there and then release them. Here now, due to this COVID-19, most of the overtime as far as CIT is concerned at the hospital, we don't have any agencies that I know of, which was involved like Lynchburg, Bedford, Campbell County, and our county. We're not letting them work overtime. So yes, sir, the officer has to actually stay there. I would probably within the last 3 weeks or so, we've had officers that have been there over half of the night. They're working night shift because the road shift is like 6 p.m. at night to 6 in the morning. They might get one, say, at 12 midnight. Well, they're going to have to stay there until they make a decision on what they're going to do with the person. And then if they decide if they're going to TDO that person, but they get the order, then either they will be responsible to take them to where they need to be, or we can get somebody who's coming on the early shift, like at 6 o'clock in the morning, to come over and leave. But the time limit on these emergency custody orders and TDOs is getting different because it started out with 8 hours. Now you're looking up to at least 12 hours. And I know the state was apparently going to have this big contract where they were going to hire these companies to actually transport these people. But right now in this area, it's not working. It's not working, so it's being left up to the jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me what CIT stands for?
Pardon?
CIT, you mentioned the deputy has to stay there until CIT, or they used to have?
Yes, the CIT is pretty much a critical incident, like team per se, where they do, it's a school that you go to get certified when you're dealing with mental people and stuff like that. Know how to care for them, know how to keep an eye on them and everything like that. And that's something that's been set up in this area through Lynchburg, Amherst County, Campbell County, and I think Bedford also, I believe. They let those officers work overtime if they want to on the days off.
Do we need to have any of those CIT trained folks?
Yes, sir. Excuse me. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And the transportation funding idea and that whole model, you said it's not working here. Is it because we don't have access to it, or?
Well, I'm gonna say we have access to it, but the problem is the companies that they actually sign contracts with, they are not working out that well as far as having manpower to do these transportations. In bigger areas of the state, Norfolk, Fairfax, Richmond, an area like that, I think that's working out pretty good.
I see.
But we've had a problem here with it.
And the legislator that did that was from rural Virginia, and he did it as a way to address the need for, like what you just said, the
Right.
shortage of manpower, and unfortunately it's not working out that way.
Yes,
Thank you.
Mhm.
What can we do to help you? What can we do to help the sheriff's department?
Look out for us, as far as public safety, our health benefits, our salaries, everything, you know. Anything you can do to help us, will be greatly appreciated. It will be greatly appreciated.
I hope that you'll see our dedication to you all come through and what we're doing with the salary ranges and all of that stuff this year.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Board members, did y'all have any more questions of Deputy Elliott? I can't tell you how much we appreciate what you do. And you're a busy man. The fact that you took time to come out of your day and talk to us and sit through, listen to us, talk about the works of the county is greatly appreciated.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the county attorney's report.
I have nothing to report that I don't think you probably already know, but thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lockaby. We will now move on to citizens' comment. Is there anyone here wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing and hearing none, we will now close citizen comment and move on to matters from members of the board. Mr. Ayers?
Madam Chair, I have nothing.
Mr. Martin?
Madam Chair, I mentioned it earlier, but I would like for the county administrator to look at ways to do the same thing for law enforcement that we did for public safety. I think the time frame was April to June 31st. Come back with a recommendation to the board on how we might be able to fund that.
Ms. Rogers, are you clear on that request?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Pugh?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Moore? I've got one thing, individual from New Era Progress called me today, and they are doing a special for the graduates this year, knowing that they're going to have an unusual graduation. They're going to do something that they used to do years and years ago, which is put every single individual senior portrait in our Amherst New Era Progress, which is cool. And it'll give them something to remember the year by. And they have asked this board for a sponsorship of $300.
So,
All right, Mr. Martin, you've made the motion. All right, motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. Everyone in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. And I will send that to New Era Progress here shortly. All right, is there a motion to adjourn knowing that we've got a workshop at 5 o'clock?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.